Alex, I spent 3 hours yesterday just staring at a rough opening I framed, just standing there with a tape measure, doubting every life choice that led me to that moment.
Only 3 hours? That's a new speed record for you. Usually the tiger stare lasts until the sun goes down or the coffee runs out. What was the whole Jorn?
It's those windows, man. I don't care how many times you've done it. There's something about cutting a giant hole in a perfectly good, weather-tight wall that feels like you're tempting the rain gods to move in permanently.
Well, considering we're diving into window and door installs today, I'm glad you got the existential crisis out of the way early, because for most of us, the thought of a leak behind the siding is enough to keep us up at night.
It should. Water is like a persistent debt collector. If there's a way in, it's going to find it. But today, we're talking about how to build a fortress. We're looking at some great methods, specifically the zip system stuff from Johnny Brook over at Crafted Workshop, and some classic replacement techniques from the BYOT folks.
I've seen the zip system. That's the bright green or black stuff with the integrated weather barrier, right? It looks way cleaner than the old school house wrap that flapping in the wind for 3 months.
It's the difference between wearing a tailored raincoat and wrapping yourself in a garbage bag. It's slick. But whether you're using zip or traditional OSB, the principles of keeping the outside out remain the same. Let's start with the foundation, the sill. If you mess up the bottom, the rest of the window is just decorative.
I've seen people just slap the window in and caulk the daylights out of it. I'm guessing that's the fast track to rot?
That's the I want to replace my wall studs in 5 years method. You have to create a slope or a pan. On that not so tiny house build, they use that stretch tape. It's moving away from the old rigid plastic pans. This stuff is like, imagine if a rubber band and a piece of gum had a very strong waterproof baby. You can pull it around the corners without cutting it.
Wait, no cuts in the corners? That feels illegal in woodworking.
It feels wrong, doesn't it? But every cut is a potential leak path. By stretching the tape up the sides of the jack studs, you create a seamless basin. If water ever gets past the window flange, it just hits that tape and rolls right back out onto the house wrap. It never touches the wood.
Okay, so the sill is protected. Now we're lifting the actual window. Those things are heavy, Tiger. And usually it's just me and a very frustrated friend trying to hold it level while someone else screams, "Is it straight?" from the inside.
Shims are your only friends in that scenario. And don't just shove them in wherever. You want them under the side of the frame, near the corners. But here's a little secret. Don't nail the whole thing shut the second it looks level. Just tack one top corner.
Just one nail? That sounds like a recipe for a window falling on my head.
Just one to hold the pivot point. Then you go inside, check for square by measuring the diagonals. If the bottom left to top right is the same as top left to bottom right, you've won the lottery. If not, use that single nail to pivot the window until it's perfect.
I actually saw a tip about the jam reveal lately, making sure the distance between the window sash and the frame is even all the way around. Is that just for aesthetics?
It's for the life of the window. If the frame is racked, even if it looks level to the ground, the moving parts are going to rub. You'll be fighting that window every time you want to breeze, and eventually the seals will fail. You want that gap to look as uniform as a fresh haircut.
Let's talk about the flange, or the fin. I've seen some people put sealant behind it, and some people swear that's a mistake because it traps water. Where do you land?
This is where the shop fights start, Alex. But the gold standard is the U-shaped bead. You run a thick bead of high-quality sealant on the back of the top and side flanges, but you leave the bottom open.
Leave the bottom open? Won't water get in?
No, you want water to get out. If any moisture gets behind that window, it needs a drainage path. If you caulk the bottom flange shut, you've just built a tiny aquarium inside your wall. And spoiler alert, studs don't know how to swim.
Okay, that makes sense. Drainage is key. Now, once it's in, everyone goes crazy with the flashing tape. I've seen houses that look like they're covered in silver duct tape by the time the windows are done.
There's a hierarchy to it. It's like shingles. You do the bottom first, which we did with the sill tape, then the sides, and the top is the hat that covers everything. In the zip system video, they use that rollers to really mash the tape into the sheathing.
I was going to ask about that. Why the roller? Can't I just use my hands?
Your hands are soft and weak, Alex. No, but seriously, that tape is pressure activated. If you just press it with your thumb, it's barely hanging on. You need that roller to break the adhesive beads and really fuse it to the wall. If you don't see the texture of the board through the tape, you aren't done yet.
Doors, that's a whole different beast. A window just sits there. A door is a moving wall that you slam 40 times a day.
Doors are the ultimate test of your patience. With the tiny house build we were looking at, they were doing an exterior door into a tight, rough opening. The biggest mistake people make, not checking the floor.
The floor? You mean the sill?
Exactly. If your subfloor isn't perfectly level, your side jambs will be at different heights. One side will be higher, the door will hit the top of the frame, and you'll be tempted to take a belt sander to a brand new door. Don't do that. I may or may not have tried that in my younger, dumber days.
I can see you now, sawdust flying, cursing the door's entire ancestry. So how do you fix a floor that's wonky?
You shim the sill before the door even goes in. Get that threshold dead on level, and use a thick triple bead of sealant on the floor. You want to see that squeeze out when you set the door down. That's your only line of defense against a driving rain coming under the door.
What about the long screws? I always see people swapping out the tiny screws in the hinges for these 3-inch monsters. Is that actually necessary or just for home security?
It's for the sag. A heavy exterior door will eventually pull the hinge right out of the soft pine jamb. By driving a long screw through the hinge and into the actual house framing, into the 2x4 studs, you're anchoring the weight of the door to the house itself. It's the difference between hanging a heavy coat on a thumbtack versus a wall stud.
Okay, let's talk about the satisfying part. The great stuff. I feel like people use this stuff like whipped cream on a sundae.
And that is exactly how you bow your window frames. If you use the high expansion foam in a window gap, it'll press so hard against the jamb that your window will never open again. You need the window and door specific foam. It's low pressure.
Is there a technique, or do you just point and pray?
Be conservative. You only need to fill about 50 to 60% of the depth of the cavity, let it expand and move. Also, pro tip, don't foam the very bottom gap where your sill pan is. Again, we want a weep path. If water gets in, it needs to be able to find daylight.
It sounds like let the water out is your mantra for this whole episode.
It's the lesson I learned the hard way. I once had a client call me 2 years after a remodel because their floorboards were cupping. I pulled the siding off under a window I'd installed, and it was like opening a sourdough starter. It was a fermented mess. Why? Because I'd oversealed it. I hadn't given the house a way to breathe or drain.
That sounds like an expensive mistake.
It was the best education I never wanted to pay for.
So if someone is tackling this for the first time this weekend, maybe they're putting a shed together or finally replacing that drafty kitchen window, what's the one thing they shouldn't rush?
The prep of the rough opening. Most people want to get to the look, I put a window in stage. But the actual installation, the nailing and the leveling is easy if the hole is prepared correctly. Take the time to wrap your opening, install your sill flashing, and check your plumbing level 3 times before the window even leaves the box.
And maybe have a friend who's more patient than you to help hold it.
Preferably a friend you don't mind shouting at for 5 minutes. Because in the heat of the moment, when you're trying to shim a 50-pound piece of glass, the polite version of yourself usually stays in the truck.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is the logic of the water. It's not just about sticky tape. It's about thinking like a raindrop. Where am I going to land, and how do I get back to the grass?
That's it exactly. If you can visualize the path of a drop of water from the top of the roof all the way down the wall, you'll know exactly where to overlap your tape.
Well, I feel significantly less terrified of windows now. Doors. We might need another 20 minutes on those eventually, but I'll take the win for today.
Just remember, if the bubbles in the level are happy, the house is happy.
Thanks for the deep dive, Tiger. Next time, can we talk about something that doesn't involve potentially ruining a structural wall? Maybe just birdhouses?
No promises. I've seen some pretty catastrophic birdhouse failures in my day. Seriously though, don't forget the roller on that tape. Your thumbs will thank you.